Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. It's afternoon for me here, but I know it's early morning for Shari over in LA. So thank you so much. I'm delighted to be joined today by Shari Low. Shari is #1 best-selling, million copy-selling author, international best-selling author of many brilliant novels, including My 1 Month Marriage, One Summer Sunrise, and of course, One Last Day of Summer, which we're going to be talking about today. Thank you so much for joining me, Shari. How are you doing?
Pleasure. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for arranging this. I'm really excited to chat.
No, it's so exciting because the book came out this week. We've had an amazing read along this week with all of our bloggers. So I did want to say a big thank you to all the bloggers that have been taking part this week. Shari and I are going to touch on some of the questions you've been answering this week, some of the book club questions you've been discussing. And we're just going to have a big old chat about this absolutely wonderful book, which I was just saying to Shari before we came on. I think I've read many of Shari's books and I do think it's my favourite. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. I loved it. Although I have to say, I loved it, but also during the week that I read it, I didn't really sleep because I was reading it so late into the night, and also had a massive cry at the end. So I'm not sure I'm that but yeah,
there's nothing worse than the morning after the puffy eye late night read.
Oh my god, my eyes hurt. I read it on a Kindle. My eyes were hurting anyway, but it was all worth it because it was absolutely brilliant. So thank you. Before we get started, I just want to say, everyone listening, please do ask questions, pop them in the comments, and we will do our best to get through them. But first of all, I wanted to sort of talk about the book generally. So for anyone that hasn't read it yet or doesn't know about it yet, the book is got a really brilliant concept. It's got a really interesting structure. But it's a structure that, Shari, you've used for quite a few of your novels in the past, and it's super clever. I just think the idea of 4 people on a plane coming together is just genius. But before I do a very bad job of explaining it, why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about what One Last Day of Summer is about?
Okay, so it follows 4 characters: Bernadette, Tig, Hayley, and Dev. And it's like, as Nia says, so like many of my books, it's set over a 24-hour period. So generally, my books start at 8 o'clock in the morning and they finish in the early hours of the following morning. And it's a structure that I really love because I just think it packs loads in, and you get to do lots of great twists and turns. And you get to form really fast connections with people because they're forming really quick connections with each other. So when the 4 characters in this book wake up, the first one is Bernadette, and she is planning she's been married for 30 years. She's no longer married. I won't tell you why. And she is planning her first ever holiday with one of her best friends. And at the last minute, she wakes up at 8 in the morning. Her girlfriend calls and she cancels on her. She's had a family emergency, so she can't go. So Bernadette is now faced with the prospect of traveling to St. Lucia on her own, something that in her previous life would have terrified her. Then you've got Hayley, who is married to a top fertility specialist, but they're having problems in their marriage, mostly because she has been trying to fall pregnant for years and it hasn't happened yet. So this is kind of they're going on holiday. They're really hoping that she's really hoping that everything will come together, that she'll fall pregnant on holiday, and that's her hope. But it's a very troubled marriage. So she's a lot of other things that she's maybe not addressing that she then comes to address on the flight. Then you've got Tig, who's an Irish singer or guitarist in a rock band, who I was madly in love with the whole time that I was writing this.
I'm not surprised.
Honestly, I used to say, I haven't done it in every book, but I used to say that if there's a character in your book that you're in love with, it makes going to your desk every day much, much easier. And Tig was that this time. I was just obsessed with this character. So he is like a really decent, lovely guy. He's been with the same woman since they were both 15, and he's now 30. It's childhood sweethearts. They've been together 15 years. He's on his way to his destination wedding in St. Lucia. He's traveling with his brother and a friend. And just as they're about to leave in the morning, his brother drops his phone and Tig picks it up. And there's a message on his brother's phone that could suggest that Tig's wedding might not be the happy ever after that he is hoping that it would be, because it's a text that appears to come from the woman that Tig's getting married to. I won't tell you if it does or not, because you find that out throughout the book. And so he is suddenly thinking, wait a minute, is there something going on with my brother and my fiance that I don't know about? And then the final character is Dev. Dev is a hopeless romantic. He's a journalist. He's a London. Did you love it? Do you know, it's really strange. I could almost split 50% between my girlfriends, the ones who loved Dev and the ones who loved Tig. So it was a real 50% split between which one was their favourite. And so Dev had a one-night stand with a woman a couple of weeks before, and he's decided it was love at first sight. He's decided that she is the woman of his dreams. But when he met her, she was on the way to Gatwick Airport to fly to St. Lucia for a destination wedding. Not hers, at least not as far as he knew. So he knows that she's in St. Lucia, and he's just decided, I'm going to go, I'm going to find her. And because it was love at first sight, and she must have felt what I felt in that one glorious night we had together. So you've got these four characters who have all got things going on in their own life, and they all come together when they're all sitting in the same row of a 9-hour flight to St. Lucia. And the action unfolds hour by hour. So you see everything that's going on with them, and then round about noontime you see them meeting, and then over the course of the 9-hour flights, through all their conversations and a lot of other stuff that kind of goes on, you see their relationships developing, and you see them all sort of looking at their own lives, looking at each other's lives, forming connections, and lots of things have changed by the time they land.
Does
that sum it up, Leah?
It really does. I just think it's such a genius concept, because when you go on a flight, you're sitting next to strangers, you're all going to the same place, but always for very different reasons. And I think shedding a light on that was just absolutely genius. And there's that really claustrophobic thing about being on a flight. No one can get anywhere, no one can do anything. No, it's absolutely brilliant. Because you've done, like I say, a few novels with this sort of structure where you've got different characters, and we see them at the start of the day, we see them at the end of the day, and their life will change in those 24 hours. When you're structuring a book like that, how do you plan it? Do you write one character the whole way through, or do you chop and change? How does that sort of process work?
Okay, so first of all, I don't plan it at all. And I know that horrifies people who do plan books. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying there's a right way. We've had this discussion many times online, on our Facebook pages and things like that. So yes, I don't plan a single thing. And no, I write each chapter. I alternate between the chapters. So I'll write Dev's chapter, and then I'll go on and write Haley's chapter, and then I'll go on and write Bernadette's and Tig's. And I have no idea where the story's going. I have no idea what's going to happen. It's the story it genuinely takes on a life of its own, and I'll be writing something in Dev's chapter that Haley maybe makes a comment, because she's sitting next to him, and she maybe makes a comment, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what she's thinking right now. So then I'll take her chapter in that direction. So I find writing in this structure really interesting. Some of my books have been one or two characters, usually 3 or 4, because I like lots to be going on. And some of them have just followed a story with those characters through months or years or what have you. But the writing them hour by hour over the course of 24 hours just keeps me really interested. And I just think that you can do so much with them, and you can really surprise yourself and the characters with what's going to happen next. So I've always got a kind of loose idea as to what that character's dilemma is, and but I never know where they're going to end up. I never know if somebody's going to connect with somebody. I have no idea until I actually write that chapter, and then I just see what happens.
Amazing. And I just love how, because you do swap from character to character, you end a chapter with something happening from somebody's perspective, but then the next chapter will be then a different person's perspective on the same thing that's just happened. I just think it's so clever, because you just you get a real insight into the different personalities of these people, how they react. No, it's absolutely brilliant. This is a really hard question, but when you were writing before, is there a particular favourite you had when you were writing?
Definitely Tig. Well, no, that's not true. Tig, I was madly in love with. Dev, I had such a sweet spot for. I wanted to take him for coffee and say, right, Dev, come on, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Haley, I would have had cocktails with, and Bernadette, I would have moved into a spare room and lived with her forever because I just absolutely adore Bernadette. She is the one who, when if if I was on that plane, when I got off that plane, I would be giving Bernadette my phone number and saying, "Look, give me a call, and we'll go for a coffee." I loved her warmth, and her heart, and yeah, she speaks to me. She's someone that Bernadette is someone that I would hang out with in real life. She reminds me of a lot of my girlfriends, so she would be my pal.
Yeah, I have to say, it's Bernadette that made me cry at the end, because I won't see
Oh,
anything, but Bernadette in Baggage Reclaim, after they get off the flight, just honestly just completely hit me like a ton of bricks. And
Bernadette's wise.
she's just incredible.
And I'm not very wise, so I feel like I need a Bernadette. I've got a couple of really wise girlfriends, and I could do, as many as I can get. So, yeah, Bernadette's just got this wisdom because she's been an accident and emergency nurse for 30 years. There's not much that she hasn't seen. There's not much that she hasn't dealt with. She knows all of the human emotions, all of the human, every crisis that could happen to someone. She's dealt with it. So I just feel that Bernadette has got an inner wisdom, and of course, Bernadette she's a bit of a dichotomy because in her work life, she makes a lot of really quick decisions. She's the head nurse in an accident emergency department in a really busy hospital. So she's got a high pressure job. She makes tough decisions, and she's a tough cookie. But at the same time, in her personal life, she has spent a long time sort of racked with indecision. She was in an abusive marriage for 25 years to a very eminent cardiac surgeon. And she stayed, for various reasons, which I explore a little bit in this book. But Bernadette was in one of my previous books, and we really explored it in that one. So she is someone who feels that she has just come to a point in her life where her life is finally her own. But in her personal life, she's a bit indecisive. She's like, will I go on the flight? Will I not go on the flight? Oh, I don't know if I can do that. And this is a woman who has worked in a Glasgow accident emergency department for all of those years. And she's like, I don't know if I could go to St. Lucia Mon. Could I? Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. So I just, that whole sort of roundedness of her character, I loved exploring that, how somebody can seem one way in a certain setting and then be very different in a different setting. And I think a lot of people are like that. I can be a bit like that sometimes, and I can appear one way when I'm really feeling another way. And so I just wanted to explore that with Bernadette. But she would definitely be my pal. I would want to hang out with her forever.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely backs herself in her professional life, as you say, but then in her personal life doesn't back herself and really ums and ahs about whether to get on this flight in the first place. It's so interesting that sort of
but that's a consequence of living in an abusive marriage for a long, long time. Her ex-husband just eroded her confidence and eroded it. So, and this holiday for me was a really good opportunity to build Bernadette's confidence back up. So that was my plan, or it certainly developed. That was the plan that developed. I wanted her to just find her, excuse the pun, but find her wings, find her confidence, find her strength, find all of those things that she has in her work life. And I wanted her just to find all those things in herself again.
No, she's completely inspirational. There's a lot of love for Bernadette going on in the comments. Shari, I'm just going to share Zara, who says that Bernadette is definitely her favourite.
Thank you, Zara. Thank you.
So with these characters, obviously you lived with them for a long time. Some of them, like Bernadette, you've had in previous books. Is there anything when you were writing, because you don't plan, anything that surprised you when you write them? Did they catch you off guard in any way?
Did they surprise me? I think any of the surprises, lots of surprises, but but they went into the book. So I don't want to sort of give away anything that would be a spoiler. I think with Bernadette, it wasn't a surprise, but I loved how she immediately snapped into sort of somewhere between her two personas, between her work life and her personal life, and she immediately became the mother of the role. You know, like, and that's happened to me in real life. You know, I'm that woman who, if I'm somewhere and there's, you know, I get all upset in the toilets, I'm the, you know, I'm saying to whoever I'm with, I'll be back in an hour, and I'm sitting down with that person and, you know, chatting to them and trying to sort of cheer them up and help them. And so Bernadette became that character. She became sort of the mother of the role. So, and she found herself through helping the others. And if you haven't read the book, when you read the book, you understand that, because Hayley is dealing with a lot of the things that Bernadette dealt with in her marriage, and Hayley and Bernadette's conversations just let Hayley kind of look at her own life in a different way, and almost gave permission to Hayley to question the life that she was living. So that was, to me, that was a lovely moment, a lovely theme in the book. But no, as far as surprises go, my only surprise was that the cabin crew on the plane, they were a little extra surprise, because the characters I had down, but there's one of the cabin crew in particular, Stefan, who just made me laugh all the time. I just kept having him popping out of curtains all the time, and he made me scream. So yeah.
Especially when things are very tense, he was very good at diffusing the tension, which I think was really nice and light-hearted.
That was a bit of a surprise. I hadn't planned to have an eccentric, like, fun, really unique cabin crew member in the book. So he was a bit of a surprise, and I just adored him.
Really great. We've got one person, Fiona, saying that she loved Dev because she's just as daft as him. So I love that. Thank you, Fiona.
Fiona is one of the lovely readers who's been taking part in the read along. Fiona, I have loved looking at all your pictures all week. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who took part in the read along this week. I've had such a good time and been thoroughly entertained by all your contributions. And I've also been really interested to hear your viewpoints on the questions we asked. So if you took part in the read along, thank you so much.
My next question is actually one that was part of the read along, which I think is a brilliant question. If you'd been sitting in the row behind these characters and heard everything play out as a sort of third party, is there one question you'd have wanted to ask them? And maybe could that be something that you didn't get a chance to explore when you were writing the book?
It's a really good question. There's nothing that I wanted to ask, because every single thing that I wanted to ask, I explored in the book. You know, that's so. I almost feel like a bystander when I'm writing a book. I almost feel like a bystander. I'm just watching something unfolding in front of me, and you know, I do delve into every single question that pops up in my brain. I do kind of delve into it. But if I was sitting in the row behind them, I would definitely have tried to sort of insert myself into the conversation somewhere. I would be walking past going, oh, hi. And, you know, I'd be wanting to be a part of the conversations. And I would, as I say, I would absolutely definitely be wanting to give Bernadette my phone number and tell her to give me a call, and we could go for coffee and lie on a beach somewhere. And she's a woman in my age group. And yeah, I just think that she's the one that I would really want to get to know. If I was 35, I would be giving Tig my phone number. Way too old for him now. So no, there was nothing that I wanted to ask, but I would love to have been in amongst it. I would love to have been in that role. I would love to have been part of that conversation, or part of all the conversations. And they're all characters that they're all people that I would have been fascinated by in real life.
Yeah, I feel like if I'd been sitting in the row behind them and I'd only caught snippets, I think I probably would have been like, these four people must know each other, but how? You know, because they just clicked, you know, they're like in their own ways and all in different ways. They did just really click. And yeah, I think I probably would have been thinking they must know each other, but I can't work out how. Why did you choose to set the book on an airplane? Was there any particular inspiration for that? Have you ever been in a similar situation?
So I always look for something when I'm writing the books that are set over 24 hours. I just always look for a setting that will bring people together. So one of my previous books, One Day in Summer, which came out last year, it was set at hang on, what was that one set? That one was set at a wedding. Was that the wedding or the graduation party? There's been so many of them.
Yeah, you've got the garden. One Day in Summer was the garden party.
That was the garden party, and then the One Summer Sunrise. That was that the wedding, or was it the other way around? Anyway, I like to look for events where people will be thrown together who won't know each other. And yes, the plane. So the plane inspiration came from a million years ago. I was actually coming back from New York, and I had been there on my own. I had broken up with my boyfriend, and I'd gone off to New York, and I had one of those holidays where it was like a last minute thing. So I got to New York, I got on a bus, and I just got off the bus wherever it stopped. And then I got on another bus and then got off that bus wherever it stopped. So I was just traveling around, having an absolute blast, chatting to everyone that I met. And I say this was like 35 years ago. It was a long, long time ago. And on the way back from New York, I sat next to this guy who I had never met in my life before. And then by the time we got off the plane, he had cancelled all his plans, and we ended up going away and get together, and we were together for a while, on and off for a long time after that. So I just love this concept of you can get on a plane and just sit next to someone and not know them, but then realize that they were meant to be in your life, or that they were meant to be a part of it. It's just, you can, that happens all the time. We've talked many times about the fact that I met my husband and we were engaged a week. We get engaged after a week. The minute I met him, I was like, yeah, okay, you're mine. You're going nowhere. And he was the same. And that's something that's very out of character for him. So I just love this concept of just one meeting, one conversation, one situation, and it can completely change the rest of your life. And it's happened to me so many times that something has happened. I've met a person in a weird setting. One of my girlfriends, who's still one of my closest girlfriends, I met her and we'd been sent on a management course when I was 23, and I lived in Hong Kong, and I worked for Sheraton Hotels, and I met her at this course because I looked across the room and she was the only person who looked as bored as I was. So I was like, do you want to go for a drink? She was like, yes. So we snuck out for a drink, and we've been closest of friends ever since. So I think that I just love this concept that you can just meet someone anywhere, anytime, and it can change your life. And I will always continue to believe that happens, because I think that's sort of, that's one of the big joys in life.
Yeah, I think fate is something that really does, bring people together in this book, because, when you read the book, you see that those four people weren't necessarily supposed to be sitting together on that flight. For various reasons, they end up sitting next to each other. And I think, that sort of twist of fate. And then throughout, there are many things that happen in the book where, a character could have found something out, but it was exactly as the air and the cabin crew are coming around with food or whatever it is, and they get interrupted. And I think that does happen in life. And I think it's such a strong thread in this book, but in a lot of your books.
And I also think that I tell my children this all the time, like when something's going badly wrong, if you're in a situation that's, with anything in life where it's not going right, that you're unhappy, you're there, but don't worry, because everything will like spin on a heartbeat. And I tell my children that all the time, like whenever they're in a a job or a place in a relationship or any of those things, and it's just not going right. And I always say, look, this is just meant to happen, because it's just meant to be the stepping stone to get you to the next bit, and the next bit's going to be great. And I really, really believe that in life. I really believe that things change, like no matter how rubbish a situation you can be in at any moment, that something, you're only meant to be there because the great things coming. It's like the eternal optimist in me. I'm really optimistic about things, and even when things are really bad. And so I think that was the thing about the characters in this plane, on the plane. Tig was, he was in a really great situation up until he read that text. And but the others were all really off in their lives. They were all in at times in their lives where they're not particularly happy. Bernadette was happy in her life, but she hadn't really found her confidence in her personal life again yet. Hayley was in this marriage that was unhappy, and she was just despairing. And Dev was just this, he thought he was never going to find the right person for him. And so those three characters were in times of their lives that weren't great. And I loved just showing that how things can just change in a heartbeat, because it's happened for me so many times that I've been in a really, a situation that wasn't great, and then something happens and you're like, oh, okay, the reason I was in that situation was because this amazing thing was about to happen. I don't mean to sound really profound here.
I just think it's a really brilliant way of looking at life, and I completely agree. Everything happens for a reason, as they say, and I think
I really think that.
And Fiona actually in the audience is saying, every bad situation gives you the opportunity to make lemonade from the lemons, and I think that's a really lovely way of thinking.
And I think the other thing that came through in this book, which is the other thing I really believe in, is like pals can get you through anything. These four became pals. These four became friends. They all established bonds. And the other thing is, it wasn't age specific, gender specific. It wasn't like that. And my life's very like that. I've got male friends, female friends. I've got friends who are in their 20s. I've got friends who are in their 70s and 80s. So I love the concept. I love to bring in all my books. You'll see different age groups who are friends. In the What books, What Next was my last release, and you've got Val, who's in her 70s, and the rest of the girls are in the younger girls in the family are in their 20s, and then the main characters are all kind of in their 40s and 50s. So you've got all this multi-generational friendship, relationships, connections going on, and I just think that is a really beautiful thing in real life as well. I really encourage that, and I really love to have that in my books.
Completely agree. I think it's really special. I think that intergenerational thing is just absolutely brilliant. I'm going to take us back to another one of the questions that we've been asking our readers to answer this week. What thought or feeling did you take away from One Last Day of Summer? And I know a lot of people have been sharing really interesting things. I wondered, Shari, is there a particular thought or feeling that you hope that readers would take away from this book?
I think just the one we've been discussing, just that sort of, no matter what happens in life, it can change on a dime, but also be open to that happening. Like if you see someone you think's interesting, chat to them. Like that whole thing of, you just don't know who and when that somebody's going to come into your life, and it doesn't need to be a romantic thing. It can be, it can be a friendship or a partnership, or it can be a million different things. But I think it's just that whole feeling of, no matter how crap things are, they can still always get better, and you just never know the minute that you're going to be in the situation or meet the person that's going to help you make it better.
No, I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think that's such a clear message from this book, and I think it's just a really lovely way to think of things. A lot of people would love to know what you're working on next, Shari. Is it a similar book to this or completely different?
Okay, so I've got 3 things on the go at the moment. I have the next book, which will come out next March, which is another one-day book, but it is a completely different setting, and I don't want to give I'm just in the early stages of that, so I don't really know where it's going to go yet. So we'll see where that one ends up. I'm also working on a Christmas book for next year. Every year I say I'm going to write a Christmas book, and every year I don't.
Because you have done Christmas books in the past, but it has been a while, so I think fans would love that.
Yeah, I've done kind of wintry books, but I've never done a real Christmas book. So I've done, I did the winter series, which they were all sort of set in winter, but I've never done a true Christmas book. So definitely want to do that for next year. And then the other book that we have coming out in September is a very sort of drastic departure from my normal books. a few years ago, myself and Ross King, the television presenter, the Hollywood presenter on Lorraine and Good Morning Britain, Ross and I have been friends since we were teenagers. So we hung out in the same group when we were really, really young. And so we've been friends forever. And a few years ago, we wrote a couple of books, and Hollywood dark, sort of glamorous, gritty thrillers. And I'm in Los Angeles at the moment, and about a year ago, we're like, we should really write another one. We should really do, keep that going. So the lovely people at Boldwood Books, we're now re-releasing the first two, and it's now a trilogy. There'll be 3 altogether, and so the first of those books is called The Rise, and it will be out in September, and it's about 3 2 male characters and a female character who grew up together in Glasgow, but they've all ended up very successful in Hollywood. But there's some demons from their past that's catching up with them. So it's like sort of gritty thrillers, but again very relationship based, but with a bit of Hollywood glam as well. So the first one, The Rise, will be out in September.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of reading The Rise, and I just absolutely loved it. I think it is different to your books, but it is just as compelling and exciting. And yeah,
it's one of my favorite books that we've ever written. It's I love the whole combination of the grittiness and the sort of the darkness in the book, but also the kind of glam stuff. I grew up on Jackie Collins and Judith Krantz and Shirley Conran and all those amazing 80s bunkbusters. That was my kind of upbringing. So it was great to go back and recreate that kind of vibe, that kind of real. The book is set between 1970s and 80s in Glasgow and 2013, 2014 in Los Angeles. So it's a real span of kind of genres and time periods. And it was great to go back to growing up in the 70s and 80s. It was great to revisit that. And then it was great to sort of bring it a little bit more up to date. And the final book in the trilogy is set in the present day. And obviously, even in the last few years in Los Angeles and Hollywood, things have changed dramatically for the better with the Me Too movement and what have you. So, all of that, we'll see all of that developing in the course of the 3 books as well.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting with that one as well is, all of your books always have friendship as a big theme, and this one's just a very different take on friendship, which I think is really interesting.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, the 3 characters in that book, Ross and I say we've been friends forever. So like the characters in that book are sort of the core of their relationships is their friendship growing up. So in a lot of ways, it's not any different from my other books. The core of the books is friendship between people who were put together because of circumstances.
No, it's really interesting. I have to say, we've got a few people in the audience who are asking if there's going to be a sequel to One Last Day of Summer. We want a sequel of a year later, please. And actually, we've had a couple of people say that. Thanks for your comment, Mel. Is that ever on the cards, Shari?
Always. So if you read my books, you'll see that characters pop up again later in different books. There probably won't be a sequel that will necessarily feature all 4 of these characters, but the book next year might feature one of them, and they will be in contact with the others. So you get a glimpse to see what's happening with them all. I have some, Bernadette, as I say, Bernadette, she was first in a book that I wrote a few years ago, and that's when we learned the story of what happened with her marriage, and it's not that I'm being vague, but so I think this was book number 32. So I can't keep them all in my head. There's a lot to remember. And then sort of in the I have another character, Val, who pops up in loads of my books just because she's my favorite person in the whole world, and I just like to drop her into places to change she's really good fun, she's really outspoken, she just gets things done, so she's in a lot of my books. So yeah, characters will always pop up again somewhere else, for if I feel that there's readers will want to find out what happens to them, or if I feel there's a little bit of untold business, they might not be the main character in the next book, but maybe their sister will be the main character in the next book, so you'll get to see what happens with them. That actually was the story with the summer books, and the one day in summer, one of the main characters was a character called Holly. But while I was writing Holly, I fell madly, Hope. But while I was writing Hope, I fell madly in love with her sister, Maisie, who was just supposed to be a background character, but she was really good fun. So in the next book, I made Maisie one of the main characters. So yeah, they're all interchanging, interlinking. Just stay tuned. They'll all pop up again somewhere.
I'd love to know the story of Stefan, the cabin crew. I want to know what happened, how he ended up there. And I mean, he would have some stories. The amount of people he will have come across.
Some stories. I can't set another book in a plane though. I'm going to have to put Stefan somewhere else,
we'll
so that we can catch up with everything that happened with him. I just loved him. He was a blast.
We've got a question from Jessica Redland. I know you write your books really intensively. How long did it take you to write this one?
Okay, lovely, Jessica. I love Jessica's books. I'm just saying, just get that out there first, because Jessica's Hedgehog Hollow books are just like, they're like a warm cup of tea on a cool day. They're just soothing. I love them. They're such good reads. So I would say this one probably took maybe 3 or 4 weeks to write. I do write them really quickly because, and again, it's all part of the chemistry of the fact that they're all written in a day. I would write these in a day if I could, because I like to see things, as they're unfolding. So I do write them really quickly, and but then obviously the editorial, process takes a while. I think I was trying to add up the other day. I think since Boldwood launched, I think this is my 8th book that I've written for Boldwood, and that would be in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So I do write them. Sorry,
it's been busy.
It's been busy, but I mean, I love that. And whether I was on, deadlines or what have you, I would still write them in that short period of time. It's just what suits me, because I also find it very immersive. In terms of I start writing in the morning and I'll finish writing at 24 hours later. I just keep writing, and people will pass me food, but I don't stop. So, and that's the way that I have to write. I can't do. I've got friends who are writers who'll do 3 hours a day, or they'll do 8 hours a day, but they're very fixed start and finish times. But it doesn't work for me. So I start writing, fall asleep on my keyboard all the time. My husband always says that I should have the letters of the keyboard like right across my forehead, because I always regularly fall asleep on my keyboard, because I just keep writing until I fall asleep. Then I wake up and then I keep writing again. So when I'm writing, I'm sort of locked away somewhere. Which is a little bit different. When my children were younger, I used to just write everywhere. I would be in the car outside the school waiting to pick them up, and I would be writing. So I just think you have to, I just pack it in whenever I can.
Has that always been the way, Shari? Because obviously when you first started writing 20 years ago, publishing schedules and things would have been quite different. Like you wouldn't have been, presumably weren't doing 3-4 books a year, just because publishing didn't really do that at that time. Did that slow you down at all, or were you always just...
No, so when I first started writing, I also wrote 2 newspaper columns as well. So between, and one of the newspaper columns was a book review column that I reviewed 3 books every week. So I've always had that situation where I've been a bit overloaded and reading 3 books a week, and writing a page on a literary page for a newspaper, and writing an opinion column, and writing books as well. So I would usually do 2 books a year. I just, and then, back in those days, I used to do a lot of stuff for magazines and things like that as well. Now I just write books, and although I do 3 or 4 a year, but I love it.
Yeah. Did you think doing those columns back then have helped with your writing? Is that something you'd recommend to aspiring authors, getting that sort of experience? Do you think they go hand in hand at all?
I think it was again, I think I've said before, so I have no official education in writing. I didn't do creative writing courses. I didn't go to university. I didn't write a single thing until I was 30. So, you know, I had other jobs. I ran nightclubs and things like that. So I did not write a single word until I was 30. And I just had this story in my head. I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know, you know, I didn't really know how. In those days, you didn't have internet and everything. So I didn't know how to be a writer. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how you should structure a book. I'm still not really sure if I know how you should structure a book. I knew nothing. And one day, you know, I kept saying, I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer. My husband pointed out that it would help if I wrote something, which I really, you know, I hate it when he's right, but he was. And so I sat over the course of the next 2 weeks. I had a full-time job, but in spare minutes and spare nights, I wrote the first 10,000 words of a book and or of a story that I had in my head and sent it all off. And I was just really, really lucky that I got a publishing deal on that first 10,000 words. Such a fluke. And so I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And the publisher came back and said, look, we love this. We want to, you know, offer you a publishing deal. And if you could send us the rest of the book, but I hadn't written the rest of the book. So I was like, yep, absolutely. I'm just going to tweak it a little bit. And I just spent the next took 2 weeks off work and just wrote the rest of a book, got it up to 90,000 words and sent it off. So I think that and then I was lucky enough to get a newspaper column from that. So I've never had any training in anything. And I think the one thing that I've learned from it is that you don't have to, you know, you don't have to, there's no right way and there's no wrong way. If you're a storyteller, you're a storyteller, and there's no ideal time to write. So, you know, for anyone who wants to write, there's no ideal time. There's no ideal way. There's, you know, you just have to just sit down and put words on a page. So it's not that I think that those, you know, working in newspapers and what have you, as I say, that wasn't my full-time job. I only got the newspaper columns because I'd written a book that someone liked, and they asked me if I would write, you know, funny columns about family. I wasn't in the writing industry before that at all. So I think what it did do is it helps me the only thing I would say, it probably helps me to write quickly, you know, because if you're doing 2 columns a week, then you have to write quickly. And so it probably got me into that habit. And that's a habit that served me well. Look at your dog.
Sorry, I know, we can hear something outside. He's just like, he's on alert. Going back to the theme of this one, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I just have to ask you one question. What are your top travel tips? Anything for everyone out there?
No, charge your Kindle. That's the top travel tip. Make sure your Kindle's charged. Make sure you've got books. And if someone next to you looks like they could be a really nice person, then have a chat to them. I do, you know, I travel a lot, but I don't ever do. I've got no set regime. I'm always fascinated when you read like supermodels travel regimes and they take their moisturizer and their toner and they change their clothes and all. No, I don't do anything. I sit myself down. I usually order a gin and tonic, and then I open a good book and I chat to anybody that I think looks interesting that I might want to chat to. So that would be my only travel tips.
Love it. Thank you so much, Shari. It's just been such a pleasure. It's a brilliant book, and for everyone listening who hasn't had a chance to read it yet, please download it, please buy it. It's available in every format, and you won't regret it. It's perfect summer reading, and I absolutely adored it. So thank you so much, Shari. And if anyone's got anything else to share, otherwise, I'm sure you'd be more than happy, Shari, to go back into the comments and answer any final questions anyone's got.
I absolutely will. And again, thank you to everyone who has bought this book, who's told anyone about it. Thank you to everyone who's read it, and to all the bloggers who have supported it. You are amazing. I really appreciate the blogging community and everyone who's done the read along. I just can't thank you all enough. So yes,
it's fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll be back again soon. Bye.
Bye-bye now.